Hi, my name is Frank. Thank you for the purchase of the Coilmaster Jr. There's a few things you need to know before you get started operating the machine. The machine comes packed a certain way. We need to remove some packing material before we get started. It also comes with a set of tools that we use for setup purposes. You need a set of Allen keys, 1/8, 3/32, and 5/32, a pair of wire cutters, and an open-end 3/8" wrench. And you also need coil. And the first thing you have to do is plug the machine into a 115 or 230 volt power source. You also have to provide air to the machine. We require 3 cubic feet per minute and 80 psi to run the machine. What we need to do is remove this tie wrap. This is put in place so the machine ships secure to your location. Like that. Next thing we want to do is loosen up your chute knob, rotate your chute up to an approximate position. Okay, our next step will be to take a piece of coil, place it on the coil retaining rod. Make sure that when placing the coil on the rod, that all the coil loops line up with the grooves in the rod. Okay, now we're going to take the rod and place on the coil bed. There are some hold down clamps that come with the machine, and this is going to hold the coil retaining rod into the bed in the correct position. There are knobs on each side that have to be tightened after this is placed on the machine. Make sure the grooves in the retaining rod are facing down. Now we use 14 millimeter coil for any size books. Coil size is actually 14 millimeter down to 8 millimeter. There will be different size coils placed on this rod for different thickness books and different diameter coils. Okay, now that the coil is in place, we're going to power up the machine. And we'll get some books. Okay, our next step is to place a cover, pre-punch cover on top of the coil in the coil bed. Notice our book stop is on the side here, which is going to also stop the cover. Place the cover all the way up against this surface. Now if you notice, you'll see yellow teeth from the back rear comb in between the holes. We need to remove all signs of the teeth. We do that by loosening the side guide lock and turning the adjustment knob. If you notice, the cover is moving over to the left, and just by putting a little pressure on it, you notice that all the yellow teeth are gone. This is the optimum setting for this. Make sure the hole is lined up between the first two teeth of the rear comb. Before we go any further, we need to learn a little bit about our controls. Okay, we have our main power switch on and off here, which illuminates green. The reset button is used anytime we shut the machine off using the stop switch or if it's plugged in for the first time. Notice you have to turn the emergency stop clockwise in order to reset it. And also we have the on button, which does say reset. Okay, we have a conveyor control off and on, and the conveyor speed, which controls the in-feed conveyor for the coil. We can leave that off right now. And we have two setup switches. We're going to be using these switches a little bit more, and we'll cover a little more detail as we go forward. On this side of the machine, we have a forward, off, and reverse switch, which is actually going to be for the spinner wheel. It's going to insert the coil, and you could actually bring the coil back out of the book if it's not going in properly. We have something called a spinner brake, and this is used from thinner books to thicker books. The reason why we use a spinner brake is if the coil goes too far. This will happen mainly on 8 and 10 millimeter sizes. We could enhance the brake and have the coil stop sooner, or if we need a little bit more time on larger diameter coils, we could turn the brake off, which would be position 1, and to allow the coil to go a little further, give it a little more time. The spinner speed is located here, and a normal speed would be about 5, and that's what we're going to set it at. And the last control is an air blow. Sometimes on thicker, heavier books, it pays to turn the air blow on. There's little air nozzles next to the book. It's going to help fluff up the book as you're inserting it into the book holder. The air blow assists in jogging thicker books. The next step would be, we've already adjusted the cover in a lateral position. We now have to adjust the cover up and down. And this is prior to putting the book in place. The way we do this is using the coil bed adjustment knob located on top of the machine. There's a locking handle that has to be loosened. And if you notice, I'm going to lift the cover up. We have, once again, our back home teeth painted yellow. What we need is a little bit of the yellow showing, which they are right now. But by moving it, the knob, you're going to notice that the cover is hanging below, or the cover is too high above. We want about a 32nd of an inch of yellow teeth showing below the edge of the book. After we're done, we relock the coil bed knob. Now that the adjustments are made up and down, we're going to remove the cover, reinsert it with the book. This is a very important step as well. When you jog the book, place it into the book holder, and hold on to it tight. When you place it on the coil, make sure the book is placed all the way against the side guide, and also give the back of the book and the front of the book a little bit of a push down. And what we mean by that is grab the book from the back, push down on the back of the book as well as the front of the book, and do that several times to make sure all the sheets are actually pressed down onto the coil. The last thing we do is actually press it up against the book stop on the side. Okay, now we need to form the back of the spine to the same shape as the coil. We're going to do that with this knob here, and there's a locking knob on this side we're going to loosen first. So first we'll loosen the locking knob, and we're going to turn this knob here until the coil bed tilts down in the correct position, and then we have to re-jog the book in place. See if it's formed properly. Now you can see the book forms perfectly to the coil in the coil bed. After the book is formed properly, we're ready to go to the next step, would be inserting the coil into the book. Okay, there's a few things we need to do before we get started. One is to take a coil and place it into the coil chute, what we call a conveyor. Okay, a couple things you need to know about the conveyor. There's an adjustment knob on the bottom, which will tilt the chute up and down. We want to make sure the coil is in line with what we call the bowl assembly. Okay, so make sure that's tight after we're done. The coil bed also moves in and out. We want to turn off the spinner motor to its off position for now. We also want to turn the book sensor to its off position as well as the knife cut. Okay, at this point in time, we're going to press the foot pedal and you're going to notice the bed's going to come down out of the way. Okay, this is our setup mode for the spinner assembly. We need to make some adjustments in the up and down and in the in and out. Okay, in order to do that, what we have to do is actually grab a hold of the belt that drives the spinner wheel. And we want to turn the drive belt so the coil rotates toward the hole of the book. Now if you notice, the coil is not lining up with the holes right now. And this is what we need to do to set this up. We have to actually take the leading edge and help it into the first hole. And what you want to do is insert it into 4 or 5 holes. And what this shows you is that the book and the bullet assembly is out of line with one another. And we need to make this adjustment up and down so that the coil entering on the bullet is in level with the coil that's in the book already. And how we do that is by loosening the locking lever on top of the machine and turning this knurled knob. And by turning the knob clockwise, notice that the bolt is rising. And when it's about level, we're going to leave it there and relock the knob. We're going to do the same thing looking down at the edge of the machine to make sure the coil is also entering the book in this other angle also. Now that our up and down is correct, okay, we want to make sure in and out is also correct. You notice the coil is coming out further out than the book. What we're going to do is loosen the lock knob on top, and by moving this whole assembly, you can use the knob for that. We can move it in and out. Okay. What we're looking for is to make sure the coil that's in the book is in line with the coil that's on the bullet. Okay, we do that with this knob right here. You can look at it visually by coming down from this side of the machine and looking direct, or even feeling it. When we're done, we're going to relock the knob. I'm going to use the same belt and remove the coil by hand and reinsert it to make sure that the leading edge of the coil goes into the holes without any assistance from your other hand. Okay, our next step is to adjust the left and right spreader. Notice on a 4-to-1 250 punching that the first hole to the edge of the sheet is wider than the bridge. We have to adjust the leading edge of the coil to jump over that into the first hole. We have to do this on the right and also on exiting the book. We have to move the front comb now so that the teeth are centered between the holes. Loosen the locking knob on the front comb, slide it over until the teeth are in between the holes, and retighten the knob. Okay, now we have to adjust the spreader by using a 1/8 Allen key. We're going to loosen up this Allen screw, back the coil out of the book all the way. If the spreader is not in the right position, you'll notice that the leading edge of the coil actually hits in front of the hole or behind the hole. We need to move the spreader to push the leading edge into the hole. Retighten up the spreader and double check. We're also going to do this on the exiting side also. We have to make sure the leading edge of the coil exits the book the same manner. Now that the spreaders are in the correct position, let's turn the spin and control knob to the forward position and insert the coil into the book. Our next step is to set the knife adjustment. Take the book sensor switch and turn it to the on position to raise the knives. On top of the machine is a locking handle for the knife set dial. If you notice that the knives will go down or up as we turn the dial, we want to be inside the coil by about 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters when setting this before locking. The knives also move laterally by loosening up this nut using a 3/8 adjusted opening wrench. By loosening this, we can move the knives left or right. Okay, a good position for the knife is right in the center of the coil. We could also pivot the knives using this Allen screw here, and by moving this position we get a better crimp. But if there's no crimp, we could change it so there is a crimp. Now we have to do this with both the left and the right. When we're finished setting up, we're going to change the knife cut switch to the on position. The knives are going to cut and they're going to crimp. One other adjustment are these locking collars located on the cylinder shafts. We use the locking collars only from 14 millimeter coil size and higher. The purpose of the collars is to hold the front clamp just a little bit larger than the book so the book falls freely on the coil. For anything less than 14 millimeter, we allow these collars to be free so the clamp could just fall on the book itself. Now that the machine is set up, let's run some books, get some coil. Now we're going to change combs for a different pitch. Let's get the combs. Okay, to replace the front comb, we're going to remove this adjustment knob completely. Remove the top comb. And remember, they're identified with the correct pitch. And remove both sides, both knobs. The front book stop assembly is going to come completely off the machine. Be careful, there's a few air holes on the side. What we do is just place this on the way for now. Using an Allen key, we're going to remove the 3 mounting screws for the rear cone. This is also identified with the pitch. It's actually 250. We're replacing it with our combination cone, 248, 2475. Tighten the cone securely. And one thing before we go any further, we can replace the coil retaining rod. This is the rod that we had placed the coil on previous with a new rod, which is also the correct pitch. And we can leave that for when we're setting up our new bolt thickness. So for right now, we'll leave it in place, and we can change that when we're actually changing to our next job. We're going to replace it with the 2475, 248 cone, which is also marked clear. Before we do that, we're going to set the front book stop assembly back on the 2 air cylinders, and being careful that when you push the hoses in the back, make sure that the air fittings are turned such that free movement. So we're going to go back on the front assembly and put our knob back in, our tightening knob. And the last thing we'll do is put our knobs back on here. And our lock knobs are on top of that. So that's a cone replacement, as simple as that. For 0.248 pitch, you notice the margin is narrower than the bridge between the holes. Therefore, we won't be requiring use of the spreader, the left or the right. Okay, now that we're finished, we're going to remove the cones for storage. Now we change cones, we're going to have to make some minor adjustments on the lateral side guide. This is due to 44 holes, an 11-inch piece, compared to 43 holes on a chute 250. We have to place the cover back in on top of the coil. If you notice, the yellow teeth are in between the holes. So we're going to have to loosen our lock knob. and turn the adjustment up until our holes will line back up with the center of the yellow teeth. And we tighten up. Now that the side guide is adjusted, we're going to take the book and place it back into the top of the coil. We'll need to double check several adjustments. One will be the spinner. We'll also have to make some minor adjustments on the knives because of the pitch change. Now that the book is in place, we're going to make a spinner adjustment up and down or in and out. Some fine-tuning is necessary because of the pitch change. Remember, we have to turn our book sensor and the knife cut to the off position. Make sure also the spinner's in the off position. We're going to press the foot pedal, and we're going to turn the coil in by hand like we did previously. I'm going to stand back to make sure it looks like the bolt's in line with the book and also in and out. We turn our spinner switch to the forward position. And you can tell the book is lined up with the coil because it went all the way through and stopped at the end. Now we have to make a knife adjustment. So we'll have to come up and loosen up the knife locking handle. Turn the book sensor to the on position, bring the knives up. You can notice that the knives came up between the coil and into the coil. So let's lower the knives. Using our wrench that we used earlier, we're going to loosen up the whole knife holder somewhat. We're going to move the knives so they're right in between the coil. We'll do this for both the left and the right. Actually, the right looks pretty good. Let's bring the knives up to make sure it doesn't deform the coil, and that's actually going between it, which it is. Always look down from the side, make sure the knives are actually inside the coil. And you may have to bind one or two books before having this correct. Tighten up the knife, turn the knife switch from off to on. And what we're looking for is a good crimp. Nice 90 degrees so that the coil doesn't spin back out of the book. Let's now change over sizes. Because we switched from 14 millimeter down to 8 millimeter, the 14 millimeter coil can stay in the retaining rod. We don't have to change this out. So anything from 14 millimeter, any sizes, down to 8 millimeter, we use 14 millimeter. From 25 millimeter down to 16 millimeter, we use a 25 millimeter coil in the retaining rod. We're going to place the book in the book holder on top of the coil. Because we made the lateral adjustment earlier, our holes are lined up in that position. We're going to put the coil back on the bullet and go into the setup hole. Press the foot pedal, and as before, we're going to turn the coil into the holes, and if they're not lined up, we're going to force the coil into the holes for about an inch or two. Once again, we're looking at the bullet alignment with the holes in and out and up and down. So you can see how we need to make a down adjustment so the bolt is level, and also we have to make an in and out adjustment. Once again, we're going to loosen up our locking handle. Now we're going to turn the spinner switch to the forward position, and spin the coil in. And we're going to bring the knife book sensor switch to the on position so the knives come up. We're going to make an adjustment with the knives so the knives are up into the coil. While doing that, we're going to loosen the knife set locking handle and bring them up. And we tighten. this point in time, it may be necessary to use this white nylon spacer. What that does, it does not allow the hook support, and the coil tends to wander through the holes. This will help support the coil, so it's always in the correct position for the knife. So press it on like that, and turn it, rotate it, and then pull it out slightly so it's up against the coil, and tighten up the Allen screw below. Okay, now that we have that in place, let's turn the knife switch on. Now we're down to the 8mm books. We're going to change over the machine from 8 to 25mm, which is the full range of the Coilmaster Jr. And the first thing we have to do, we're going to have to lower the coil bed to give some more room between the coil bed and the bottom cone to allow for setup for 25mm. Doesn't harm to bring it down a little extra so you have plenty of room to change the coil on the retaining rod. Now we have to switch the coil on the coil retaining rod, so let's get a piece of coil. We'll also need a pair of wire cutters. What we need to do before placing the coil on the coil retaining rod is to cut 1 or 2 inches off the end of it. We don't need it the same length as the book. It should be shorter. As before, we're going to loosen the retaining rod clamps. Remove the clamps completely. Remove the 14mm coil from the rod. Place the new coil on the rod, lining it up with the grooves. They don't have to be perfectly in the grooves to start with. We can do this when it's on the machine. What we want to do is look down from this angle and make sure all the coils are actually in the grooves before tightening. Very important step that the coil is not on an angle. If it is, the book will also be on an angle and will have very difficult results. If it's free like this, it's perfect. As before, with the 8mm diameter setup, we're also going to have to reset the cover in the up and down position because of the size of the coil. You'll notice that the cover, if I place it in, it's way below the yellow teeth on the cone. So what we need to do is loosen the locking knob and bring the coil bed in its upper position. Pull the front cone back and adjust up until about 3/32 of the yellow teeth is shown. Relock the knob. You may have to go back to this adjustment several times in order to have it correct. Now we have to loosen the clamp to allow for a thicker book. I'm going to loosen it up wider than it needs to be. First you loosen the 2 locking knobs. and then turn the knurl knob below that. Try to turn it out about the same distance on both sides. Notice the clamp is coming on further. We don't want to leave too much room for the book, but just enough during production to slide down easily. We can make this adjustment also when the book is in. Once again, we may have to go back to this adjustment several times while setting the machine. For now, we can loosen the locking knobs, retighten them. And go on to the next step, which will be rotating the coil bed to form a perfect radius on the bottom of the book. Now, once again, as before, we're going to loosen the bed using this locking knob and turning this tilt control to form the spine perfectly to the coil. Now, as before, we are going to lift the book out of the bed and re-jog it. And view from the end of the book and the coil. See if the radius conforms to the coil. And this is looking very good. Don't forget to lock the locking knob before we proceed to the next step. Now that the book is formed perfectly to the coil, let's remove that book. Place the machine in setup mode. Press the pedal. And what we're going to do is turn the book sensor off and on. We want to lower the knives so it's out of the way of the larger diameter coil. We'll loosen the knife set locking handle, turn the dial, and once again bring this out of the way far enough so you have plenty of room to adjust later. Okay, let's turn the knife switch back into the on position. So the cut and reset the coil bed. Let's place the book back into the coil bed. Once again, making the book is jogged correctly and also to the right. Let's grab the coil out. We're going to have to move the coil conveyor chute, so we'll loosen the locking knob, bring this down so the coil enters onto the bullet properly. Once again, we're in setup mode still with the spinner, unless you're in the off position. We're going to turn the book sensor and the knife to the off position. Press the foot pedal. And as before, we're going to grab a hold of the belt. We're going to turn the belt, which is turning the spinner, and we're going to take the leading edge of the coil and help it through the first inch or inch and a half of book. I'm going to stand back, and you can notice that the bullet, once again, is not lined up with the holes in the book. You're going to have to make some spinner adjustments up and down and in and out. If you notice that the coil is taking a downward curve before it enters the book, so we want to move the bullet assembly, the whole spinner assembly up in this case. And it is a good idea to go down to eye level so you can see the coil entering into the book. And the same is true in and out. It's good to come to this side of the machine and look down this direction. Don't forget to retighten your handle before proceeding. Let's back the coil back out of the book. Let's see if we're any closer. Once again, we want to grab a hold of the belt below, rotate the coil, and if it goes in without the assistance of your finger, then you know you're in a good area to proceed to the next step. Let's now turn the spinner control knob to the forward position so the coil runs out through the book. If there's any resistance along the way, we're going to turn it from the forward position back to the off. That looked pretty good. We might want to turn on the speed a little bit at this time. I want to cover it why we have a spinner brake adjustment. If you notice, it's on number 3 right now. We left it in that position for 8mm coil. By placing this knob on 1, the coil is actually going to go through a little further. Now it's okay to back the coil through the book by hand in this case. It went a little too far. But this allows the brake not to go on immediately. It allows larger diameter coils to travel a little further into the book. At this point in time, I want to turn the hook sensor from off to on, which is going to bring the knives up. And again, it's best to look from the front of the machine. You want to see if the line opening is lining up with each coil of the coil itself. And it looks pretty good, but we do have to raise it higher. And we're also going to look from this view here, looking down, and rotate the knives using the Allen screw as we did earlier. But first we need to bring the knife set back up. And if there's a little bit of resistance here, we can help the coil move into the knife opening at this point. But we are going to have to make some lateral adjustments on the knife. Okay, let's make the lateral adjustment. We're going to use our 3/8 of an inch open Allen wrench. We're going to loosen the hex bolt. And we're going to move the knives. It's okay to bring the knives back down again if necessary. And bring them up several times so there's no resistance of the coil itself going into the opening of the knife. Now if you notice, this side goes in nicely. This side is actually pushing the coil up, so this is not in the correct position. We're going to have to make an adjustment on it. Let's bring the knives all the way down. We can remove this block that we actually installed earlier. Use our 3/32 Allen key. Loosen up the set screw located in the bottom of the block. This won't be necessary for larger diameter coils. Let's loosen up the hex bolt here. I want to move the knife set up and down once again so the knives go into the coil without resistance. You notice the opening of the knife is capturing one of the coils. Both sides look good. Let's retighten the hex bolt. The higher the knife is set, the longer the tail on the trim. Okay, we're going to rotate the knife using an Allen key and the Allen screws on each side. It's very important, especially on the smaller diameters, that the knife is located on the crown of the coil. Notice how it rotates back and forth within the coil. We want to make sure that the knife is in the coil all the way, and once again we want to look from this view into it. Some fine adjustments are necessary after we make the initial adjustment. We're going to turn the knife set switch from off to on. We're going to cut the coil and crimp it and be ready to catch the book. Okay, what we're looking for is to make sure we have a nice crimp. If you notice this side, we have a nice 90-degree crimp. The last adjustment which should be made is to the opening of the front comb assembly. What we should do is take another unbound book. If you notice when you place it in the front comb assembly, there's a lot of movement. We want to open up the gap for easy placement of book using this locking collar located on the cylinder. Using an Allen key. Right now the collar is loose from the previous setup, which was 8 millimeter. We're going to tighten the collar up with just a little bit of opening here between the book and the front comb assembly. We need to do this on both sides. Okay, now let's bind some books. Make sure the book is once again placed properly in the book holder by pushing down the back of the book so it conforms to the radius of the coil, and also the front, and push it to the right against the side guide. Coilmaster Jr., and here are a few tips. 90% of the problems with the Coilmaster Jr. are bad punching, bad jogging in the machine, and poor quality coil. This is what quality punching looks like. Good coil is relatively straight, uniform in pitch and gauge with a chisel edge.